Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Fall Enrollment Masterclass. Excited that you're all here. We're going to give it a few minutes. I see people still joining. Obviously, I know we're right at the top of the hour, and we had a little over 100 people register for this. So I know a lot of people are going to wait on that recording, but I want to give everyone a chance to join who's going to. In the meantime, for those friends who are in our Zoom call right now, I'm going to go ahead and put a little poll in right now. There we go. I just launched a little question and answer that should pop up on your screen. So if you see that, go ahead and just give me a little idea of what goals you have for your studio this fall. You can type anything in there. I know a lot of you, when you registered for this, also submitted questions. Thank you for doing that. Or even just like thoughts that you were having around your studio and what you were hoping to learn. I got a lot of responses, especially around marketing. That's definitely the one that seemed to be the most popular, is sources of marketing, how to find students, and what strategies work the best for both in-person and online students. We also talked a little bit about policy, tuition, like, am I charging enough was a pretty consistent question. Also, how to structure tuition rates and how to make those updates for fall. So we're going to try to get through as much as we possibly can today. We did one of these before. If you joined us in the spring, welcome back. We did a session in May on summer retention and summer enrollment. But today is going to be all about maximizing our capability for fall, because as I think we all probably are aware, it's just a really, really, really good time for us to build our private music lesson studios and ensure that we're networking with schools in our area or other key people in our community, since this is a common enrollment period. So quick heads up too, I am live streaming this right now on TikTok and Instagram. Of course, most of you here are on the Zoom call right now too. But as a quick reminder for those of you that are joining on TikTok and Instagram, if you want to see the full recording, if you can't join us for this entire session, there's a link in my bio that you can go ahead and click as well and sign up so you can get this recording sent to you. With that, I'm still waiting on a few people to answer. If you jumped in a little bit later on the Zoom portion, there's a question that should have popped up for you about studio goals, just asking about what you're working on this summer, or as we head into fall rather, and what your goals are for your studio this school year. So go ahead and let me know so we can, again, try to tailor this a little bit more. I did read every single response that all 107 of you submitted before this, which is awesome. Thank you for doing that. I'm going to try to get through as much as we possibly can. So with that, we'll jump in. I know people are still joining us, and that's totally fine. Agenda for today. I want to talk a lot about fall policy and rate updates. This is a great, great time for us to be making adjustments to either our tuition rates or also how we structure our tuition. So if you're looking at more of like a monthly tuition, for example, that's something we can talk about today too. We're also going to talk a lot about marketing locally and online. I know we've got definitely a mix of studios here. People are looking for, again, like a mix between the online virtual students and in-person students, and a lot of studios that are open to both. So we'll try to cover that as much as we possibly can too. Then we'll talk about registration process, how to make that easy for ourselves so it's not such an arduous process and it's really clear and clean for people who want to join us. And then at the very end, I'm going to talk about how to get some free help. So if you have follow-up questions from today, you have some options on the table to get that help and get some advice from other qualified studio teachers who are rocking in their business. So with that, I know you're all filling out right now for me that little poll. It looks like about half of you have done that. Thank you so much. I'm still waiting on about 50% to tell me what their studio goals are for fall. So that pop-up should have come up. But in the meantime, in the chat where it's publicly available and everyone can see, go ahead and let me know where you're located and then what instruments, genres, disciplines you're providing instruction for. I'll try to tailor things there as well. A little bit about my studio while you all are typing away. If we have not met yet, hi, my name is Kelly. I am a private music lesson teacher in near the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area, roughly, kind of out in the suburbs. My studio is mainly clarinet. I used to teach some piano also. But as I've been joking a little bit lately, obviously my nails are a little long right now, so I'm not teaching piano, but I do teach clarinet. And that was my full-time gig straight out of grad school. I've been teaching, however, though, for, oh gosh, I think it's almost 12 years now in total. but it's been my primary source of income for about 5 or 6 years now. When I started my studio back in Wisconsin after finishing my graduate degree at University of Georgia, I knew that I wanted the studio to be my primary source of income and my sole source of income, if at all possible, outside of gigging. And I really dedicated myself towards that. So in about 2.5 months, through organic marketing, I was able to build my studio to about 26 hours of teaching. That was roughly 43 students at that point. Really, really solid income, obviously, which was great. When the pandemic hit, though, I started helping kind of give advice to friends and colleagues to help build their studios where they had questions. And that's how we ended up here today. So this is my other passion is helping you all build your studios. And I want to answer as many questions as possible. Chat is disabled. Got it. Thank you. Give me 1 second. I don't know why it did that. There we go. It should be back on. Sorry about that, guys. Take 2. Let me know where you're located and what your teaching situation looks like right now. Awesome. Go and get rid of some of these. Perfect. If for some reason the chat is still not working, absolutely, you can let me know, but I think we should be open. Yep, there we go. Perfect. All right, Rachel's in North Carolina. Hi, Brittany. Nice to see you again. Bassoon in Lexington, Louisville. That's awesome. Las Vegas, nice. Piano and voice. I was out in Vegas for a very, very brief layover on my way to NAM. Would that have been in April? It was a quick turnover in Southeastern Michigan. Hey, Jackie. Flute, amazing. Anna's all over the place. Anna has the coolest studio I've ever seen in my entire life. She teaches out of a mobile home and it's amazing. Awesome. Texas, Ohio, Denver, another Ohio. Nice. Detroit. Hi, everyone. Rhode Island. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to keep rolling, but if you're jumping in a little bit late, please introduce yourself and let me know what your studio goals are for the summer or for the fall. Keep saying summer. I'm still in summer mode, apparently, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So the reason I'm asking about your fall goals right away is that the goals that you have for your studio will impact every area of your business. Of course, rates, policies, marketing efforts are kind of the big 3 there. But I really want to clarify before we go any further today that there is no singular definition of success for studios. A full studio looks different based on your schedule, revenue, and growth goals. And when we talk about studio goals and ideal scheduling, I think there's a few commonalities that we tend to see. It's really typical for a full studio to fall somewhere between 20 to 30 hours a week of teaching. Most full studios, if this is your primary source of revenue and income, fall between 20 to 25 hours per week of teaching. Of course, there are outliers. For those of you who are vocal instructors, that's a common outlier. A lot of you tend to teach closer in like the 15 to 20 hour a week range, just because obviously fatigue is a concern. So keep that in mind that there's going to be a range here. And also, depending on the size of your studio and what your goals are, that also can impact your rates and your policies and things that we're looking at changing as well. So if you just want a few students on the side, some of the ideas of like a flat rate tuition or higher tuition rates might not be as enticing for you, and that's perfectly fine. My goal today is just to give you options and answer some questions so we can move you in the right direction for whatever your goals are. Of course, fall is one of the most advantageous times for us to build a studio. Everyone's going back to school. If we're working in that K-12 and even into college and newly post-grad age students, it's a really, really common time for people to be enrolling. But even if you're looking at adult students, the summer months can be a little hectic for everyone's schedule. And now is a great time to start shifting that focus towards our fall enrollment and fall activities as things kind of settle down for the year. I want to start with some policy updates. And I know there were some questions about this. So the chat is open if you guys have specific questions for friends that are on Instagram and TikTok. I'm going to try to take a quick peek at the chat too. But if you're in the Zoom call, especially, please let me know what questions you have about your fall policy and any changes that you're looking at making. The main 5 areas that I recommend having for your policy are attendance and cancellation, a notice period, meaning how people would stop lessons and how much notice they have to give you to do that, a tuition calculation and payment section, and then responsibility to the student and family, followed by a photo and video release. If you've heard me speak about policy before, you're probably pretty aware that I am a huge fan of a policy over a contract. And I know that might be a slightly different point of view, which is totally fine. But if I'm really candid about this, for my own studio, I don't have a contract where someone actually physically signs the contract. saying they agree to all of these policies and regulations. And the main reason for that is every time I make an update to my policy, I have to go then chase down all those signatures again. And maybe this is a little bit of laziness on my part, but I just really don't care to do that. I'm never going to teach a lesson that hasn't been paid for. So I'm not going to teach for free. I'm not going to chase back down tuition after the fact. And at the same time, I'm never going to take someone to court as a result, because I'm not going to have any back tuition or lessons that were taught without payment. So it's really not necessary or helpful, in my view, to have someone actually sign the contract physically. The one exception to that would be the photo and video release. And that can be kind of a standing document in your studio. When someone joins the studio for the first time, I think it's really helpful to have a parent or that student, if they are over the age of 18, to sign the photo and video release. It doesn't mean I don't ask for permission still to use their likeness in marketing or in any posting or on social media, but it is nice to have that on file. It's a good safeguard. I'll walk through these all in a little bit more detail, but again, if you have specific questions about these areas, please let me know. When we're looking at attendance and cancellation, it's helpful to outline what your makeup or reschedule policy is. And in this case, most studios tend to do makeup lessons as an option, but there's kind of some limitations we can put in place. And again, this is completely personal preference and whatever works well for you. But common policies that we see that I think are really successful is having a notice period for a cancellation in order to qualify for a makeup lesson. That might be 24 hours, that might be 48 hours. We really want to have a clear boundary of, if you cancel short notice, I can't get you a makeup lesson, because if everyone's canceling short notice, I don't know what openings I have in my calendar to then fit those makeup lessons in. So having that notice period just means we know what our schedule looks like a little bit further in advance to squeeze people in wherever we need to. Other options that you have could be that you have a limit on the number of makeup lessons over the course of a term or a year, however you want to organize that. I think a term is really helpful. But when you look at that limit, usually it's like 1 or 2 per term is a good limit. And if you're thinking terms, that might be like your fall term, kind of fall semester, like a September through December sort of period. It could be like a January through May and then June through August, just as one example. Of course, tweak that for your own local area. The other thing on cancellation is that you don't have to promise or provide any makeup lessons. That's absolutely an option that you have on the table. I do recommend that more for full studios. It's a good change to make kind of later in the process, or for studios that work a lot with kind of professionals and adult students who are auditioning and taking more performance opportunities. That usually is a better fit. Obviously, if you've got school-age students, there are going to be times where, as a clarinet teacher, the band concert can conflict with the lesson that I have scheduled for my students. No matter what your policy is, it's okay to make exceptions. The policy should be the most strict version of yourself. And then when we provide, 1 to 2 degrees of leniency, now we're providing really good customer service. So if the policy is, I need 24 hours notice in order to guarantee a makeup lesson, I'm not saying no makeup lesson ever. If they are sick or if something really severe happened and we have to be flexible, maybe I'm doing a one-time exception. Or maybe I'm saying we can get the makeup lesson, I just can't fit it in this week. Like, I don't have time this week, but if something else opens up, I might let you know and reach out to you at that point. Let's see. Oh, yeah, Michael will talk about the consultation in a little bit as well. We can definitely talk about that in a bit as well. Okay, notice period. This was just to stop lessons. Most studios are going to do about a 2-week written notice period via email in order to stop lessons in tuition. If you are running that option, I would do that before tuition is due, meaning tuition is not refundable. If you let me know on the 6th of the month that you're going to end in 2 weeks, if there's 1 or 2 lessons left at the end of that month, we're not coming back for those or refunding them or anything like that. It would then be, in this case, if we're looking at August heading into September, if they let me know today, that is the 2 weeks notice before September 1st. So then lessons would just cancel on September 1st. If they let me know on August 31st that they're not continuing for September, that might not be viable in the policy unless there's extenuating circumstances. We would consider then still charging the tuition, especially if they're on an automatic payment system, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then trying to work with them on reschedule or trying to get those lessons as much as we can. It might even be that we just hold that tuition if they take a month off or something like that. So again, having the policy in place then allows us to be lenient where we need to be. For tuition calculation and payment, This is just how you run your invoicing and payment collection. So as we'll talk about in a moment, I really like a monthly flat rate tuition setup. That's not necessary, but it is, I think, the most stable revenue style for most of our private music instructors. Other options that you have, you could accept a per lesson payment either on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis. I would not recommend doing that on a retroactive system where someone pays at the end of the month for the lessons they've already received, but prepayment is helpful. And then also make sure that you're outlining how people can actually get the money to you. Do you accept Venmo Business? Do you have a business bank account set up with a business Zelle account that can accept payments? Is cash and check preferable? Are you putting people on automatic payment? Make sure all that's outlined. Then you also want to outline if there's any late fees, of course, if tuition does not arrive on time. I like to outline some student and family responsibilities. Usually the student and family responsibilities are, what do we need to have at home for a successful practice environment and preparation environment? What are the responsibilities for what you have to bring to lessons on an ongoing basis? And again, the reason I'm having all this in place is that if we run into problems, I can reference the policy. So just as a quick example, if students not bring their book every single week, now we can come to mom and dad and say, hey, it isn't the policy that we have to bring this every single week. And that's just another good safeguard. And then finally, the photo and video release, which we talked about. There are templates for photo and video releases online. You could certainly have a lawyer, or like a lot of times university legal clinics exist as a free resource for small business owners. You could have that drafted on your behalf as well. Tuition policy specifically can get a little bit more complicated, so I'll go into a bit more detail here. Again, someone can pay you weekly. They could hand you cash check, send you that business Venmo transaction on a weekly basis for each lesson. I think it's really helpful if you can get proactive monthly tuition, especially if you're trying to make this more of a full-time revenue source. So that would mean in this case, you're sending an invoice. They pay that invoice on the first of the month for all of the lessons upcoming that month. And then there might be a late fee associated with that. That way you're collecting the tuition up front. It not only encourages attendance and reduces the cancellations, but because you have the money in hand, it also helps us to enforce those policies on a little bit more of a strict basis. Retroactive monthly payment would be where someone pays you at the end of the month for the lessons received. Again, I don't love doing this. I think a good single exception is if you're doing that on an automatic payment system where we have a card on file, and the setup that you have through that card system is that whatever lessons were taught that month are billed after the fact. Monthly flat rate tuition payment is my personal favorite. This is what my own studio runs on. This is what most of the studios that I work with run on, where there's a subscription payment. So students are paying on a monthly basis, usually on a monthly auto pay system, and it's the same exact amount every single month. So in this case, we look at the entire calendar year, figure out how many weeks we're going to teach over the whole year, and then divide it into 12 equal installments. And then finally, a semester or an annual payment. You can do prepayment for a larger chunk. Again, I like the stability of monthly flat rate because it reduces that, I think that like re-enrollment period almost, where if I accepted payment for September through December, on January 1st, if they owe me a really large sum again, some students or families might hesitate before signing up right away. So I think it helps to break it into a monthly flat rate, but it's totally up to you. It also means that you have to plan your household and personal finances on a semester or an annual basis and stretch that money and plan accordingly. If that's something that you feel a little bit more uncomfortable with, a monthly payment might be a better fit for you. Okay. Legal clinics. Oh, I mentioned the university legal clinics. Some university law programs, not all, but some offer free small business legal clinics, and you can attend those if they're in your state. Sometimes they have you apply for them. Sometimes they have you fill out like a survey and what you're looking for. So in that case, like if you were hiring a teacher and you needed a contract, or if you want a photo and video release, that can be a good resource for you rather than hiring an attorney. I should clarify there, they won't represent you in court. That is just like, I need a contract or I have a legal question, and it's just a free resource. Final thing about rates, when we are looking at your hourly rate, the standard right now in the US for private music lessons is $1 a minute for a one-on-one lesson. That's for anyone that has at least a 4-year degree in music and some teaching experience. Factors that would then increase that rate would be cost of living. If you're in an area where the cost of living is significantly higher, that can absolutely adjust our rate much higher. Education experience, if you've got a master's degree, rather than the $60 an hour, we usually start about 70 or 75. If you have a DMA or equivalent degrees and certification, that might be closer to about 80 to 85 an hour to start. Additional value is a really, really big one. If you are adding in studio classes and master classes and bringing in guest artists or hosting recitals, or if students can email you videos and get feedback in between lessons, any additional value that you're adding in will, of course, increase your hourly and or your monthly rate. And then demand. The best time to raise your rate is when the studio is full. And that doesn't mean that you can't raise your rates other times. But if your studio is full and you have a wait list, then we can usually tolerate in the market and in your studio a higher jump or a higher rate increase at one time. Normally, in an average single increase, we look at about 8 to 15%. If you have a full studio and a pretty hefty wait list of people who want to work with you, maybe now we're looking at a 12 to 20% increase, and we're trending on that higher end. If we don't quite have a full studio, maybe that's in the like 7 to 10% range. It can be a little bit more comfortable. Okay. Policy and rate tips. Just a couple final thoughts here before we move on. If you have any questions on policy or rate so far, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. First and foremost, justification causes more complication. When you announce updates to your policy and your rate, you do not owe anyone an explanation. You don't have to tell them why you're doing it. And I think a good example of this is if I tell families, I'm going to raise my rates, and here's the new rate, and let's say it's about a 12% increase. And I say, the reason I'm raising my rates is because of inflation. But then inflation was, again, in this example, let's say 9%. There absolutely will be several parents or students that email you back and say, inflation's only 9% and you're raising it 12%. That doesn't make sense. That's just one tiny little example, but the more that we create, reasons and excuses and try to justify those rate increases, it does cause tension. It's not necessary. You don't have to do it. You can just say, as of September 1st, this is my new rate. And so we move on, and that's totally fine. You might still get a couple of questions, but those questions might just be, we can't afford this. What options do we have? That's a very different conversation than, again, like tuition is increasing by 12% and inflation is only 9%, just as one example. 1 month of notice is ideal. So I know we're talking about some changes for September. If you were going to make some updates, we're looking at around 3 to 4 weeks. Right now it would be about 3 weeks. That's okay. It is more ideal if we can give a little bit more notice, and about a month is really, really helpful. Oops, there we go. Sorry, guys. Tapping the wrong button. Other options that we do have, though, if we have to do a little bit of a shorter notice period, that is okay. If you're looking at changes for September, I would be trying to make them in the next week, though. Otherwise, January is always a great opportunity. So don't feel like you have to cram everything in right now or be really panicked. If you want to make larger adjustments, we can spread things out, maybe make some changes to your cancellation policy right now, and then a rate increase in January, just as an example. And then my final point here was select your changes strategically. We really want to make sure that we're not overwhelming people. So doing an entire brand new policy haul in the next 3 weeks might be too much. That's okay. It's more ideal if we can do a couple changes now and then maybe a couple changes in January, or a few changes now and a few more changes next September. It's okay to spread things out. One thing I didn't put on this slide that I would also note, I don't love doing big policy or rate updates at the end of the school year for summer, because summer is already a higher attrition time. So it's better to make those changes now or in January if you have the option and the choice. Okay. I want to talk about reliable marketing. Before I do that, I'm going to pause for 1 second. Any questions that you have? I'm going to scan my comments on my other devices really quickly too. I think I covered everything that's answered and asked in these questions too. Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. I'm glad this is helpful. Okay, if there's anything else that you guys are curious about, obviously this is open forum. You can definitely keep asking me. For now, we'll keep moving into marketing, which I think is the meat of why most of you are here. So I'm going to try to get a lot of this content through, but please ask questions. I want to first and foremost clarify that I'm a huge fan of organic marketing, meaning we are not paying for advertising. So Google ads, Facebook ads, YouTube ads, billboards, newspaper advertisements, the list goes on and on and on. I just don't love them. And I don't love them for a variety of different reasons. One, a lot of our digital marketing is more expensive right now. Like, again, Google and Facebook ads. than they were a few years ago. And the pandemic kind of created that situation for us, of course, but more people are buying online right now than ever before. That means that those advertising costs have increased. There's just more demand, and Facebook and Google are smart. They know they can get the money out of us. So I don't love that part of it. And the second thing is that when we are looking, especially at something like a Facebook ad, you're showing that information to people who may not be interested. And if they accidentally click on it, you're still paying for that click. It's just kind of a random thing that gets thrown into their news feed, and they may or may not be ready to buy. And a lot of times when we find students through those systems, they tend to be looking for the cheapest option, not the best option, not the best fit, not the most qualified teacher. And that's, again, not a universal truth, but that can happen. So again, I don't love the paid advertisements. I also don't love using matchmaking services like OutSchool, Take Lessons, Lesson Face, Thumbtack, Bark, insert, countless things that popped up over the course of 2020 and 2021. There's so many of those. They're going to take, 20 to 30% of your revenue, which is just not worth it, in my opinion, when we can do a little work on our back end and create those leads ourselves for free. And the other thing I don't love about those matchmaking services is that they own your book of business. So if they close or something happens, it just disappears. And there are some programs that will have you pay for leads. I think like Thumbtack and Bark operate this way. They'll have you pay a fee directly to them to talk to a potential lead. But again, I don't know if all those people are real or if they just have a profile up still, but they've already found the service they're looking for. It's not ideal. So the two areas that I want to focus today are on social media and then creating mutually beneficial relationships in your community. On social media, the places that we want to focus are where our ideal student already hangs out. So if we're looking for local students, maybe on the younger side, we're looking to connect with parents, Facebook groups and Nextdoor are amazing for this. One little word of caution, of course, make sure you're reading the rules about self-promotion. But when you're posting in Facebook groups or Nextdoor, just be genuine. Talk about why students like working with you. You don't need to spout off your whole resume or your background or share your biography or any of that. Students are buying the experience that you provide. They're not buying your experience. This is an audition. So we don't have to sell where we went to school and who we studied with. We have to sell why people like working with you. What do they get out of lessons? Why does it feel good to be a student in your studio? What is exciting about what you teach or the experience that you're providing? Same thing when we're talking about creating content on Instagram or TikTok. It really should feel like a little window into the relationship a student might have with you and how it might feel to work with you. And if we're talking about creating short form video content, for example, on Reels through Instagram or on TikTok, that short form video content should either be examples of you playing so they can, again, hear your skill. And that also is enticing. It's just kind of fun to listen to those videos. That's what I watch a lot of on TikTok, especially. But then when we're creating Reels on TikTok, that's educational content, make it feel like you're in a lesson. It doesn't have to be, lecturing at someone and giving all that information in a really rigid way. If you just taught a topic in a lesson, use that as inspiration for what you're creating on those platforms. Keep in mind, things like Facebook group and Nextdoor might yield fast results. Like you might be able to make a post tomorrow and get a lead the next day commenting and saying that they're excited about working with you and they've got some questions. Instagram and TikTok, it's kind of a longer game. We have to keep posting. Yes, in theory, I could make a TikTok and it could go viral tomorrow. Odds of that happening are slim. We usually have to find our footing and allow TikTok as the algorithm to kind of figure out what it is that we provide and what our account is actually about. So when you start to create content, consistency is really helpful. And one of the questions that I saw pop up in the submissions before this session was, how often should I be posting on social media? And then someone else asked, what is the bare minimum? And these are great questions, but I think I'd love to reframe that a little bit. And this might be different than like the growth coaches that you see on Instagram and TikTok that talk about posting a lot. It's not necessarily about posting 3 reels and 2 carousels a week on Instagram. That's not like, the algorithm doesn't look at that and say, okay, you're serious, so we're going to share your content. And when I say the algorithm, I've been in sessions recently with Instagram's team, and I know that's not what they're actually looking for. What they are looking for is, are you creating quality content that people actually want to see? And if you can create 1 video a week, that's really, really good. If people want to see it, fantastic. That's amazing. If you can create 3 videos a week that are really strong, people want to see them, amazing. That's fantastic. But I want you to create content for social media based on what actually feels good and is exciting for you, because you'll do those things more. And to clarify, of course, there's going to be moments where you go to create something and it feels scary. Um, as like a personal anecdote, when we first started creating reels on Instagram, I was so far outside of my comfort zone that after we'd create 3 or 4, and at that time we were doing, this is like a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, we were doing a lot of the voiceovers. That was really popular. It did not feel authentic. And I would get off of that little recording session with Isaac and I would practically be in tears. I was just so overwhelmed. I felt like I was acting and I was like not being me, and it felt really crummy and I didn't love it. Now my style is when I'm in the studios, or when I'm in my studio teaching, when I finish for the night, I just open up my phone camera and I talk about what happened. I might teach something. I might share something that's really helpful in my studio. I might share a resource. That feels more authentic and it feels more like me, and it's more of a conversation, and I can create that content all day long. So it's okay if we need to spread things out a little bit. It's okay if you're not posting every single day or 3 times a week. Just do what feels good. I'm happy to answer more questions about that. If you guys have them, please let me know in the chat. We'll keep moving for now. I'm going to jump back for 1 second on the bare minimum thing. It's great if you just have profiles for your business and you have some activity even once a month. If you have a Facebook business page and you're posting on occasion, amazing. You just want to show that your business is open and active. You don't have to be posting every single day. Mutually beneficial relationships in your community. If you're looking for local students, this is where you're probably going to get the most bang for your buck outside of the Facebook groups and Nextdoor. If you're looking for online students, Facebook groups, Instagram, and TikTok are where you're going to see the most growth. The relationships in your community can lead to online students. You just have to be clear that that's what you offer and that's what you're looking for. It's okay if local students want to work with you online. But when we're looking at building these mutually beneficial relationships, I'm not going in and just asking for help. So if I'm going to approach a school music program, for example, as a clarinet player, I am not emailing the school band directors and saying, "Hi, my name is Kelly. I have a private clarinet studio and I'm looking for students. Do you have anyone that might be interested? Or I have a few openings. Do you have students looking for lessons?" Those emails just don't get responses. Like point blank, full stop, it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is that they don't know you. There's no trust there. Some schools might say, "Sure, we'll add you to our list," which means you and 47,000 other piano teachers are going to be on the list for the recommendations there. But I'm sure a lot of you experience when we send these emails, it's usually just radio silence on the other end, because they probably have a friend they're already referring to. They might even teach lessons themselves. And a lot of those school music programs, those music teachers and directors are getting so many emails on a daily basis that they have to respond to from admin and from parents, that an email from a stranger cold pitching and asking for help when they don't know them is not going to be at the top of their priority list. So instead, if I'm emailing a school music program or a homeschool co-op or scout troops or church music directors or other local arts organizations and businesses like dance studios, art classes, theater groups, or if I'm trying to network with other local musicians and private instructors, I am first offering before I ask. So I want to offer something of value. Would it be helpful if I came into your band class and did a sectional for the clarinet students? Better yet, would it be helpful if I can do something with your entire band and give you an hour to take care of some grading and catch up on some work? That's just one example. But when we approach them, we're trying to offer help. I am not including in the first email that I'm looking for students. It just feels weird, slimy, salesy. It's not authentic and organic. And I, as someone that gets a lot of those emails, like in Instagram DMs and TikTok DMs for buy my service or I can coach you on things, who wants to answer those? Like they're just icky. You don't feel good getting them and you definitely don't feel good sending them. So I tend to network the way that I want to be networked with, which is let's get to know each other and how can I help you? Okay. One question in the chat. Black hole on social media. On social media, if it feels like a black hole, it might just mean that either we haven't found our groove yet in the content or it's just kind of building up over time. It's okay if we're not getting immediate results. If you scroll like way back in my TikTok, you're going to find all the videos that I made that got less than 100 views. And still on a consistent basis, I post things that get a couple hundred views. That's okay. What I'm doing is just playing. Like I'm having fun with it. I'm trying to figure out what works, what people want to see more of. I will try anything once to see if I like making the content and if people like watching the content. And then if they don't, like I'll pivot, I'll make other things. That's totally fine. but I'm okay with experimenting because you never know what's going to land. And the videos that do the best in social media, especially on TikTok in particular, I have found are the ones that like, I just picked up my camera and started talking about something random that happened in my studio. And it felt kind of random in my brain. Like, this is not going to be a helpful thought, or like, this is just kind of me rambling, but for whatever reason, it's the one that takes off. So anyway, it's okay to play with those things and experiment, but you really want to try a bunch of different things so you can find what feels the best and works the best. Okay, I want to answer questions about marketing. I know this is a hot topic for everybody. So if you have questions, thoughts, follow-up ideas, let me know. I'm happy to help. Otherwise, I'm going to start talking about some enrollment steps and what that might look like here in a second. So I'm going to give you like maybe 30 seconds to tell me what questions you have. Not that you can't keep asking them, but before I move on, I want to hang here for just 1 second. TikTok versus Instagram. Great question. Again, it's where you feel best and where you feel the most comfortable. If you want to create content on TikTok, that's totally fine. If you don't like short form video content in general, you don't have to make it. If you already watch a lot of short form video content though, and it's something that you enjoy consuming as a person, it might be something that you like making as a person. So it's worth experimenting with. I would say, in our own business right now, TikTok is one of our largest lead sources. So I know it definitely works, and it's a really, really viable place to find students, to find clients, whatever, kind of studio situation you have, if you're working with professionals, if you're working with younger students. But again, if you don't like it, no one's going to make you do it. I'm certainly not going to make you do it. It's totally fine if that's not what you're interested in. Okay, we'll keep moving for now. If you have other questions, just let me know. In our enrollment process, I'm a huge fan of a consultation. This is what Michael was asking about earlier. So I'm going to kind of walk through this again, Michael, and I hope this is helpful for you too. So when we talk about a consultation, for me, in my mind, this means no playing. I'm not teaching for free. My one little caveat that I put on the bottom of the slide is that free trial lessons are a great opportunity for new teachers. If you don't have any testimonials that you can share on your website or in your marketing efforts at all, if you don't have a lot of students so far, or if you just have a handful and they haven't been with you that long, it's okay to offer a free trial lesson and to build the rapport and the trust with a potential new student that way. If you have testimonials, if you have experience, if you have a lot of students that have said a lot of wonderful things about you that we can use in our marketing, that's when I would definitely shift to a consultation. And you might find that you try a consultation and people still want a trial to experience things with you, and we can talk about solutions for that. That's totally fine. But I've been at a point in my career for a long time where I don't want to teach for free. It doesn't feel good. I don't feel very valued when someone asks me for a free trial lesson. And at the same time, if I'm trying to work with, again, a beginner clarinet student, that child might be 9, 10 years old. And a free trial lesson hinges the entire close and the entire enrollment and the answer of yes or no, are we working together on, did that 9 or 10-year-old have a good day? Like, were they tired by the time they got to me? Were they a little shy and it was kind of hard to open up, and maybe they're not super comfortable in that first session? Was it just a bad day? Like, something happened at school that they can't get over? And when we're talking about, any student in general, but especially our younger students, their feelings that day tend to influence their opinion on how that went. So I like to do a consultation and then offer usually something like a paid trial month for students that I'm either on the fence about, or maybe they're a little on the fence about working with me. And we'll talk about that in a moment here too. But the consultation is an opportunity for us to just discuss lessons, make sure it feels like a good fit before we even go down that path. And I think it creates a lot more flexibility. So some advantage of the consultation: number one, it allows for flexible scheduling. I, at that point, then can schedule this over phone or over Zoom. I really love doing them on Zoom so I can see everyone's faces and have both student and parent present if they're a younger student. The other thing that I like about the flexible scheduling on a consultation is I don't have to schedule this during a normal lesson period. I don't have to squeeze it in the after school hours. If I have, as someone who doesn't teach on the weekends normally, if I have a 2 p.m. free on Saturday, I'll squeeze a consultation in then. That's totally fine. Or maybe I take a call with an adult student at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. whatever needs to work for their schedule. That's not a big deal, but it allows me more flexibility there. And I can even squeeze it into a normal makeup lesson slot or something that's open short-term too. A consultation also allows me to interview the student, and it gives me space to ask questions like, what are your goals? What do you want to work on? What are things that you're hoping to learn? And if we're talking about younger students again, I want to make sure that the student is answering those questions, that the student wants to be there, and it's not just driven by mom or dad, unless that's an ideal student for you. And then that's totally fine. If we're okay with parents that are really involved and quieter students, then not a big deal. For my own student that I'm looking for an ideal fit, I really want a student who is going to engage with me and a parent that's going to give their student space to be more independent. The consultation also allows me to align goals and expectations. So this is a great opportunity for us to make sure that the goals that they have fit with what I teach. An example that I kind of poke fun at myself for is I don't teach jazz. I am not a jazz performer or jazz instructor. And as much as I sometimes wish I was, I'm just not. So when a student says they want to learn jazz, it's just not going to be a fit, no matter how we shake it. I'm not going to do a free trial lesson to go through the whole process with them just to figure out that that's what they want to learn, because it's going to be a complete waste of their time. We're going to talk about that first and make sure we're on the same page. I also want to make sure that expectations are clear. If they're coming to me in February for solo and ensemble in April, and they want to practice their solo and improve it, then I can set the expectation that absolutely we can work together for the next 6 to 8 weeks. But what I'm really focused on is the audition or solo and ensemble performance in a year and 6 weeks from now, not just this one. There's more things that we have to work through. This also gives me the chance to state all the major policy points face to face. As much as I wish everyone would read the policy, they just don't. Like, it's just a fact. I don't read the terms of service on a lot of things that I buy. I'm sure that you guys have that same experience. I don't expect that my students are actually going to read my policy. So a consultation gives me more time to then say, here's my cancellation and makeup lesson policy. Here's how tuition is calculated and paid. And here's how much notice I need in order to stop lessons and tuition entirely. That way we're starting from a place of alignment. There are no surprises when I go to enforce the policy in the future. Same thing on a contract, by the way. Just because they signed it doesn't mean they read it. So it's really helpful to go over things face-to-face first. This also gives me the chance to discuss next steps. So if it's going to be a paid trial month, for example, or if we're going to go ahead and start the lesson right away, I've got the space to do that. Paid trial month at my normal rate. Yes. So I would do that for that first month. It would be at the normal rate that I would charge for that. It might need to be prorated. Like, let's say they're starting, like today's August 11th. If they started next Tuesday, they would get 3 lessons. So maybe I'm charging 75% of my normal monthly rate at that point, but we can do 3 lessons. If it's only going to be 1 or 2, just because of where we fall in the month, I might tack that on and do a 5 lesson paid trial month, like do the end of August and September, just as an example. The other question, would you charge a nominal amount for the consultation, do it for free? The consultation is free, and 2 reasons for this. 1, if it's not a good fit, I'm not going to do the full consultation. If we get to the end of the interview and there's just no way we're going to work well together because they want to learn jazz, or maybe it's just not a personality match, that's also totally fine. At that point, I can pause and I can refer them out. I don't have to work with them. I don't have to get them the rest of that 20-minute time or whatever you scheduled. We just stop. So it gives me more flexibility and control in that regard. The other part of it too, when it's a free consultation, is I don't talk about rates until the end of that consultation. I don't put my rates on my website. It's something that, honestly, the major reason is that I provide scholarships for a lot of my students. About 10% of my studio is scholarship at any given point. And if I put my rates on my website, my students aren't going to reach out to me if they know what that price is, if it's out of their price range. I would rather them come to me. We talk about the price. They say, no go, can't afford that. And now we can problem solve together how we get them a rate that works well for them so that it's affordable and accessible. That's very important to me. And that's something I work really hard on in my studio. How long do you allot for the consultation? Usually about 20 minutes. I usually block off a half an hour in my schedule for it, but I tell them it's going to take about 15 to 20 minutes. It just depends on how talkative they are, to be totally honest. Sometimes they have a lot of questions, or sometimes, they kind of go off on a tangent. I want to allow space for that, but usually it's about 15 to 20 minutes. So then the enrollment process that we're putting in place, there are a couple steps here. First is that consultation. At the end of the consultation, if we're all happy, we're in alignment, we like the policy, we like the plan, they like what I'm offering and the rate that it's being offered at, we would select our lesson time together and get that scheduled for the next week or whenever we're going to start. I would have them fill out a registration form so you have more contact information and details. You know who are the parents and guardians involved and who's paying tuition and all that fun stuff. You can usually do this through My Music Staff or Duet Partner if you're using one of those studio management softwares, or you can create something yourself if you want. I've always just done it through Duet Partner. It's a little bit easier for me. The paid trial month, optional if we need it. If we feel like we're not sure about a student or if they feel like they're not sure about us, then we can offer that. You don't have to offer it, by the way. But what makes it a trial versus just starting right away is that I waive the notice period, part of my policy for that first month. So at the end of those first 3 or 4 lessons, if we like each other, I'm going to do that check-in and evaluation, this last step, and make sure that we're happy. If anyone is not happy, if I don't think it's a good fit, or if they don't think it's a good fit, we just stop and I waive the notice period. There will be no auto pay on their monthly flat rate tuition. There will be no next lesson next week. We just stop there and that's the end of it. You started your studio, did the policy come first or was it made along the way? I had a policy up front, which I would always recommend doing, but then I've made tweaks over time and I still make tweaks every once in a while. Although to be completely honest, most of my tweaks have been simplifying my policy. I think the wordier the policy is, it's kind of like that justification piece. The more you say, the more complicated it gets and the more people try to take advantage of those things. Like it's 24 hours notice unless you're sick. Then people are going to tell you they're sick even if they're not. So you don't have to do that. You can just say 24 hours notice. And then when they tell you they're sick, you can decide if you want to offer a little exception or not. Okay, so some studio growth essentials, things that we've kind of talked about today in different ways. You might have heard me talk about these things on social media before. The three things that every studio needs in order to be successful is a profitable lesson package, a predictable source of students, and a repeatable enrollment process. We've talked about all of that in some form today. If there's something that is like going really well in your studio or that you're feeling really good about after our conversation today, let me know that in the chat. That would be our rose. And your thorn would be something that still doesn't feel good or something that's still frustrating or something that we've got more information right now, but it's just a really bothersome point in the studio. Like I've tried emailing band directors, no one will answer me, or I just can't figure out how to market my studio, or I'm definitely not paying or charging enough. Now, what do I do? Or if it's something completely different, that's totally fine. But let me know in the chat right now if you have any other questions, if you have a rose or a thorn. You can DM chat me if you don't want to put it publicly. That's totally fine. I know some of you have been doing that throughout the session. Thorn is studio. Okay, so finding a studio space. That is a little bit of a heavier topic that I don't think we're going to have time for today, and I apologize for that. But in general, when we're looking for studio space, I would recommend starting initially with renting a room. You know, if you don't have a location that you can use at home. Churches or any religious facilities can be really great options. Community centers can be really great options. Sometimes, especially for group classes, sometimes libraries can be a good resource. It depends on the county. Some libraries require that whatever you're offering at the library is free. So you just have to check that. Schools can be a good option too. Sometimes you can rent like a school music room from a public school or even a private school or a private religious school. If they're in a church, sometimes they already have the instruments there, which is helpful too. And then sometimes you can rent a room in a music store or a music studio. So that might be another option. Dance studios too, art classes. But okay, there's kind of like the high level overview as far as like specifics in your area. That would be something we can definitely talk about offline too. It's not a big deal. Do you recommend a new student enrollment fee as you work into the studio? I don't do a new student enrollment fee. I am all for inclusive tuition. I want one flat rate monthly tuition that covers anything I would charge an enrollment fee for. Sometimes people will say that's like a resource fee. If you're going to print things or provide books for students, just rope that into your monthly tuition rate. Credit card fees and processing fees, include it in your monthly tuition rate. Recital fees, break that down into a monthly payment, include it in your tuition rate. I just think the more upfront we are about tuition and payments and anything that's owed for lessons and that experience, the stronger the rapport is with everyone that we're working with. I don't love to go back and ask for more money. I hope that helps. Rose, all the students that I have gained over the last 2 years are so loyal and amazing families to work with. That's awesome. Thorns, I've done a ton of school visits, all of which have gone super well, and the band directors continue to refer me. But it just seems as though many families are just not as interested in lessons as they were 5 to 10 years ago. This is a really interesting point, Sam. And I think when we talk about lessons in general, the last 3 years have been super, super, super weird. Really weird. And I think it changed priorities for a lot of students. And music lessons, I think for a lot of families were the first thing to go because if they were vocal or woodwind, or if it was online and it wasn't going well because the teacher was prepared, student was prepared, all that jazz, it was just uncomfortable. And now getting back into it is a little bit of a delay. Also, enrollment in band programs and orchestra programs and choir programs across the country are down when we're talking about the US specifically. I think as private instructors, we can really help that. We can make it a lot better. We can absolutely improve that and help rebuild those studios and help rebuild the school programs by working with students at a younger age. One of the things I've talked about recently on some socials is like the Nuvo instruments. I don't know if you've seen these, but they're woodwind instruments. There's like a little tiny clarinet and a little saxophone and a little flute. They're really adorable. They're so cute, but they're fully plastic, like can be submerged in water type of thing. They are meant for little tiny baby hands. And so you can start a student at 4 years old on flute and it just opens things up a little bit more. So a lot of teachers are using those for group classes and doing like little beginner kind of group band programs. They're all in the key of C. So it makes things really easy for instruction as well. We're not transposing anything, but some of those opportunities we can put out there to then support the music programs, even like mommy and me or like toddler and parent music classes. Those are great opportunities to help build those programs back up. There's a lot we can do to help here. But then as another aside, our students are spread more thin right now than they ever have been. And there's so many things and so many activities that they can participate in and so many expectations of if you're going to get into college, you can have 47,000 things on your resume. I think that impacts it too. But again, the more we put things out there and the more we can showcase, especially the more active we are on apps where younger students are, TikTok, we can help build that back up. I think that's really helpful. It gives students access to amazing things on amazing instruments that they are interested in, but they just don't know it yet. What if I use Calendly to have all my students reschedule their own lessons? Yes. I mean, you can. I use Calendly if I'm doing a like makeup day or a mass reschedule, like spring break or, I think a good example, like last summer when I had COVID, I had to reschedule my lessons for a week. And at that point, you can just shut everything down and move it to Calendly if you want to. I think it's really helpful to keep everything in one place though. So Duet Partner, my music staff or Fonz or Teacher Zone are really, really good studio management tools to do that so that you don't have to be using like Duet Partner to manage your billing and your invoicing and your schedule, and then also Calendly. I think it's really nice to have one set of tools that you're using. I use Duet Partner in my own studio. That's kind of why I keep referencing that. That's my go-to, if that's helpful. Okay. If you are looking for free help, so this is the last thing on our agenda for today. If you have questions, if there are things that you're kind of mulling over still and it feels a little overwhelming, we can talk. I'm so happy to help you with that. I would love to answer your questions. I would love to be of service. I know in our free public Facebook group, which if you're not a member of, you can find the link on my website, outsidethebox.com, or you can just search private music instructors, music studio owners, and piano lesson teachers. It's a long title on Facebook and join our group. Everyone who's a part of that group gets this offer anyway, but if you're here and you have questions, you can use this QR code to book a free 1-hour strategy session. This is just a strategy session. We're going to talk through your ideal student. We'll talk through your current studio numbers and data. We will set goals together. So if you don't know what your goals are for revenue or hours or for your rates and everything like that, we will do all of that together. If you already know, we'll confirm it for you and make sure we've got a solid plan. And then I'll give you an action plan for your studio. There's no like sales pitch or anything like that. We'll just chat. And it's a great opportunity to ask whatever's on your mind. And you can send me questions ahead of time too, so we can prepare and get through everything. But again, the QR code is here. It'll be in the recording. I'm closing that link in 48 hours. So on Sunday night, it will close. So make sure that you jump on that. If you're watching the recording and for some reason you need a little help accessing it or something, just let me know. But I'm going to email this out to everybody with the recording too. That'll be opened through the weekend. And then I'm happy to answer your questions there too. Name of the Facebook group. Yes, let me grab it for you. Give me 1 second. I'll just put the link in the chat. It is a long title. I don't know what I was thinking when I named it, to be completely honest. There we go. Do you have the direct link and not the, that's a good question. Let me pull that really quickly too. Can Calendly sync with Duet? It cannot. But honestly, if you're using Duet, then you don't need Calendly. It does that, especially they just did a huge update. If you haven't seen it, it's real cool to the calendar system. And I think it's like free for everyone at the end of the year. The end of the year, something like that. If you sign up in the next month or two, I think you get free access to the calendar or whatever. But anyway, getting way off topic. If you are using a calendar system through those systems, then you don't need a Calendly. It's just an extra addition if you want to use it or if you're not using something like that. I love HoneyBook since I do contract work. I love the automation since I can do an inquiry form. They go through the sign-up process, but otherwise managing students is easier on my music staff. If there's something like that, that does it all. You know, the studio management softwares do studio management really well. They don't do individual contract work as well. I think if you wanted to, you could do an inquiry form directly through your website rather than paying for HoneyBook. And then if you're doing the contracts and the signing, you could just do that through Adobe, which if you're affiliated with the university at all, the Adobe discounts are significant. They're big. I think if you have like a .edu email address, there's a lot there. So that's just another option. But yeah, my music staff, Duet Partner, those are the most affordable and efficient usually. I really like Fonz also. It's just a little bit more pricey than those two currently. So it just depends on what your goals are and what you're looking for. My music staff is a form that you can check box where you can put your policies. Yes, you can definitely link those and customize the registration forms on Duet Partner, my music staff. Again, you can also build it out through your website if you wanted to, if you're doing a website elsewhere, not through like the Duet Partner and my music staff hosted websites. That is probably a topic for another day. And that's something that I would definitely let Isaac take care of and discuss in more detail. That is what he does. Okay, any other questions? I've got a couple minutes. I do have to wrap up here in a second, but I'm just going to kind of scroll through our chats on all our other devices. Is Duet Partner similar to my music staff? It is similar, but BZ, it's not. With the new update, there's some differences. Like the new Duet has a season smart scheduler, for example, where, sorry, this is a TikTok question, but I can look over here again. The new season smart scheduler, I'm going to probably not do a great job of describing this, but your students get a text message. They can select all the times that work for them. And then the algorithm puts together your calendar for the fall semester rather than you having to like do the Google form or like email everybody and figure out what availability they have. It just goes, shoop, 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 done. Here's your calendar. And then of course you can like customize it and change it from there, but it's really, really cool. I haven't done that yet. I'm doing that this week. So I'll let you know what I think of it too. Can we also the recording of this webinar? Absolutely. I'm going to email everybody that signed up a link to the recording. I'm hoping to have that to you guys tomorrow. I know we went through a lot of information very, very fast. So absolutely, I'm going to try to send it to you as soon as possible. But if you have questions, you absolutely can email me also. Or if you don't get it for some reason, my email is literally just kelly@outsidethebox.com. Outside the box is BACHS, like Johann Sebastian, because I think I'm punny. So yes, you can join us. I'm so glad that you guys thought this was helpful. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for filling out questions ahead of time also. I know I put in my stories last night that I was like last minute changing the slides and trying to update things because I really wanted to make sure we got through all the questions that you submitted. If this was fun and you enjoyed this and we want to do it again, please send me an email and let me know. Again, Kelly@outsidethebox.com. Let me know if you liked this. We're going to do it again if we have the demand, but I want to make sure that I'm not like, screaming into the void, so to speak, I think as Carrie said earlier. So thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you all soon on strategy sessions and the Facebook group. Bye.